welcome back to the channel. Thought I'd put together a bit of a history of the cars that I've owned over the last 40 or so years. There's one or two interesting anecdotes, or at least I hope you'll find them interesting. So here goes. So one of these was my very first car. Had a right-hand drive version of one of these. I think it was either kind of a dark blue colour or a green colour, bottle green colour, really can't remember. It's quite a while ago. I was only 16 at the time, so I think this would have been 1981 probably that I had it. Basically because I couldn't drive it, my dad was driving it. We took it out to go and get some petrol and a wheel fell off, and it really was one of those, oh look, somebody's lost a wheel moments, and then we realised it was ours. So I think it's fair to say that through my driving career, definitely had a few if only type moments, and this is one of them. How much is a Mark I Ford Escort worth these days? This was an absolutely fantastic car, and I must admit I do remember it very fondly. I've definitely made a few mistakes during my motoring career, but this one has got to be one of the worst. Horrendous build quality meant regular mechanical problems and breakdowns. Rust was a big issue too. I was driving one day and could hear a weird flap flap noise from behind me. The noise got faster the faster that I was driving the car, and it slowed down when I slowed down. I pulled over and opened the driver's side back door, and it opened in two pieces. Basically, it had rusted so badly that the inner and outer door panels had completely separated. That was kind of the last straw with this car. I stuck the door back together with body filler and traded the car against a 1979 Mark II 1300cc Escort. This was a great little car. I actually put a tow bar on it and I used it to tow my bikes when I did a bit of off-roading. I was into enduro for a little while. Never particularly good, but I used to enjoy it. You can see it pictured there next to my mum's Skoda Estelle. I think it was a 120L or something they were called, weren't they? That was a horrible car. I drove it once. It was truly horrible, but the Escort was fabulous. The Mark II Escort got traded against this, a Lotus Eclat 520. To be honest, it was an absolute heap of junk. It was unreliable. It had done over 100,000 miles. It hadn't been very well looked after. All sorts of problems with it, but I was only about 19 or 20 years old, and it was a Lotus, and it was absolutely fantastic. I did so many stupid things in this car, it makes me cringe to think back. But yeah, there you go. Funny thing about this car, a little while after I'd sold it, a few months afterwards, knock on the door, a couple of police officers. Excuse me sir, do you own this Lotus Eclat? And I obviously explained that I sold it. Unfortunately then they told me it had been used in a robbery. The 520 Eclat had just needed so much work that it had to go, and I ended up with this, a Mark II Cavalier. This thing was truly horrible. Turned out it was an ex-taxi. It was knackered. I had all sorts of engine problems with it, and it was horrible. There's nothing else I can say. It was just horrible. The Cavalier had to go, couldn't wait to get shot of that, and I ended up with this Peugeot 507 Estate for a little while. It wasn't exactly a trendy cool car by any stretch, but it was actually a really good car, and I actually quite enjoyed having that. And you can see it next to my Mark II Mustang. This thing was a real heap. I reckon it was 97% body filler and about 3% metal. The engine was strangled by all the US emissions, add-ons and everything, and I actually blew this thing up. I destroyed the engine completely, unfortunately, just pushing it too hard, but it was fun whilst I had it. I'd actually just moved out of my parents' place and bought my own place when I blew up the Mustang. To say I was skint was an understatement, so I ended up with this. It cost all of £100, and it's a 3-litre Granada. It was actually a really nice car. It drove really well. It was reliable, and it rusted away underneath me and had to be scrapped in the end, but all in all, that was a good car. After a little while, I was able to afford something a bit better and ended up with this Fuego. This was brilliant. I was obsessed with the Fuego for some reason at that time, and I must admit that this lived up to all my expectations. The only thing I would say about it is that, being a Renault, it was fantastic for ages, and then it kind of self-destructed, and it was so expensive to repair that I sold it. I was so obsessed with the Fuegos at the time that I was walking along a pavement at the side of a car park, and there was another one parked up, and I was staring at it so intently that I walked smack bang into a lamppost and nearly knocked myself unconscious. I was married at the time, and after the Fuego, my wife and I bought a Metro City X. This was absolutely fabulous. There's not a lot to say about it. It was just a really good, really reliable car. Next came an MG Maestro EFi 2 litre. This was, in my opinion, the sweet spot of the Maestro range. The 1.6 litre turbocharged one was just too much. It was a handful, apparently. The 2 litre EFi was, like I say, the sweet spot. Unfortunately, split up with my wife at the time, and she took the car. It got trashed in no time, unfortunately. Yeah, that was a really good car. That was really nice. I was lucky enough to have this at the same time as we had the Maestro. This was a really nice car. This was a 2.2 litre Lotus Excel. I had this for about 7 or 8 years in the end. I would have kept it for longer, but I put it into a garage to have some work done on it, and they pretty much destroyed the engine, and I couldn't afford the repairs, so unfortunately I had to almost give it away. I was going through a period of having no money, and I actually did without a car for a little while. Unfortunately, for family reasons, somebody in the family was ill. I needed to be able to travel, and I bought this. It was a Vauxhall Carlton, and although it was a lovely car to drive, the thing itself was a heap. Funny thing about this one is that the guy who'd had it before me had put a CD auto changer in the boot. He drilled through the bottom of the boot, and he drilled into the fuel tank. He's probably quite lucky not to have blown himself up, but it absolutely stank of petrol every time it was filled up, and I did have to put a new fuel tank in it in the end. This is the last car I'm going to talk about in this video. This was a Mark II Sierra. This thing was absolutely brilliant. The poor old Sierra did get slammed by people generally. It wasn't a popular car, especially when it first came out. It was quite a brave move by Fords at the time, if I remember correctly, and it did sort of push the boundaries a little bit, and not everybody liked them. But I will say that this one, 2 litre injection gear, made towards the end of the run of the Sierra, I believe. This one was a very, very nice car.